Let me talk about the tropes first, because the number of tropes in here are wild. We get to jump into elemental magic. I get a little perturbed. I'm a little miffed. I am 34 years old. We have a dark brooding prince. She makes some really stupid choices in this book. You cannot look at these covers and just not automatically be drawn in. Hello friends, welcome back to a very bookish Vlogmas where I'm diving into my 2023 reading challenge. My goal is 50 books. I've hit that, I've surpassed that, I'm still reading, and I am going to be diving into my TBR, tropes that I'm totally over, and maybe my do not finish pile, and everything in between. I'm going to be talking about individual books as well as whole series, and I'm excited that you are here. If you haven't seen my book rating system, or you're curious what my book rating system is like, hop on over to the first video. I have everything timestamped, so you just have to fast forward to that, and I give you kind of a rundown of how I rate books personally. Today I'm going to be diving into, I think, one of the last series that I will be going over. I think this is the last series I read, and it is called the AWAKENS series by Elise Kova. Is it? Yeah. Hopefully I said that right. Elise Kova. Again, I was late to the party on this one. Apparently this one blew up a little while ago. I knew nothing about it. It was something that was suggested to me on Audible, and I saw the covers, and are we surprised? Kayla chose a book based on the covers because they are absolutely gorgeous. You cannot look at these covers and just not automatically be drawn in. I actually felt very differently about each one of these books, so I'm gonna rate them separately instead of as the series as the whole. Let's start off with a synopsis on the first book, because that's gonna help us piggyback onto talking about the other books in this collection. A library apprentice, a sorcerer prince, and an unbreakable magic bond. The Solaris Empire is one conquest away from uniting the continent, and the rare elemental magic sleeping in 17-year-old library apprentice Vala Jarl could shift the tides of war. Vala has always been taught to fear the Tower of Sorcerers, a mysterious magic society, and has been happy in her quiet world of books. But after she unknowingly saves the life of one of the most powerful sorcerers of them all, the Crown Prince Aldrich, she finds herself enticed into his world. Now she must decide her future, embrace her sorcery and leave the life she's known, or eradicate her magic and remain as she's always been. And with powerful forces lurking in the shadows, Vala's indecision could cost her more than she ever imagined. This falls heavily into YA fantasy. We follow Vala, who is a bookish girl, who has hidden powers, and basically is a chosen one for this entire empire. I did really like this series, but by the end, I could tell that I was very tired and ready for the YA tropes to be over. I will say though, the first book was my favorite. We get to jump into elemental magic, which is always enjoyable for me. I love some good elemental magic elements. We have a dark brooding prince, which we do love a good dark brooding prince from time to time, although I will say he got a little frustrating at times for me. Just saying. The first book is AWAKENS, and we kind of have that origin story of Vala and Aldrich. They're pretty much our main characters. There are a lot of characters in this series, but Vala and Aldrich are our main characters, mostly Vala. It's from her perspective and her point of view for the entirety of the series. Each book, we definitely have some pretty major cliffhangers. Each book in this series definitely ends on a major cliffhanger, which obviously helps you move into the next book. I did listen to this on audiobook. Audible had the entire series available as a set, and so I went ahead and used one of my monthly credits for that. The second book, we see Vala going off to war, and you will learn in the first book why she's been enlisted into the army, and so we kind of follow her path and her and Aldrich's path moving toward the war front. We get more characters, we get more friendships developing, and a second love triangle, which is my least favorite. I don't like love triangles, and we had two in this book, two in this series. So the second book, you kind of see more of that developing, which wasn't my favorite. But anyway, the title of that book was Fire Falling. We have a pretty intense cliffhanger on that one especially. Moving into the third book, which is called Earth's End, and this is the book where they are on the front lines of war in the north. We really get to see Vala coming into her powers. We have some pretty sad, traumatic events happen that spur her on to kind of go crazy. I'm not gonna lie. I would categorize this as a slow burn romance, and so by the third book, we're starting to see more payoff for the investment that we are putting into our main characters. But not everything is copacetic. I will leave it at that. More love triangle business, which, you know how I feel about that. Another pretty big cliffhanger moving into the fourth book, which is Water's Wrath. And without giving away spoilers, we are done with war, and now we're dealing with a lot of politics back at the Capitol. Vala is dealing with a lot of trauma and loss and grief and working through that, as well as figuring out who she needs to trust, who she should trust. Really coming into her own identity as this standalone person outside of other people, which is nice to see. I did enjoy that in this book. She makes some really stupid choices in this book, which doesn't make sense to me because even as a teenager, I feel like you would have seen this coming from like 10 miles away. But whatever, we gotta get to the fifth book, right? So major cliffhanger, obs, and we move into the final book, which is Crystal Crowned, and this wraps up everything from the beginning to the end. We have really big bad guy who's trying to take over all of the continent in a very bad way and killing a lot of people, torturing a lot of people. And so we have this small band of warriors left, which includes Vala and Aldrich and some other main characters who I love, and they are gathering a force to take out the big enemy. So I know I kept that very vague, but in case you want to read it, I don't want to give any spoilers away, and that's the best way that I could describe it. Okay, now that we know kind of where we went in this series, let me talk about the tropes first, because the number of tropes in here are wild. Again, I love a good trope. I think there's a reason why tropes exist. They are elements of stories that we feel pulled to and we come back to for a reason. So I'm not anti-tropes, but sometimes I get to the place where they're just... I have to remind myself this is hardcore YA fantasy. I am 34 years old. There are certain things that I'm getting a little tired of in YA fantasy, and part of that is because I'm 34 years old and I don't think like a 16-year-old. So sometimes when I'm reading stories about 16-year-old chosen ones, I get a little perturbed. I'm a little miffed, shall we say. I don't mind some morally gray characters and some morally gray choices in certain contexts, right? Because in real life, there are decisions that sometimes have to be made in the face of war and politics that nobody is going to win. It's going to be a difficult decision no matter what you choose. And there might be a mostly right choice, but even that mostly right choice is potentially going to hurt a lot of people. I felt like there was a lot of that in this series. And there were some times where the characters almost leaned into being morally gray, almost for the sake of it. That was kind of annoying to me, but you've got a lot of morally gray characters, specifically our main love interest, which is Aldrich, our main male character, Prince Aldrich. Dark, brooding, very obsessive. He's very obsessive. It's that I will protect you at all costs trope. I am majorly obsessive, protective, nobody touch her. He's that character. If you don't like that, maybe skip this. That was not my favorite. The teenage chosen one, that's a trope I'm definitely getting tired of. So that's a trope that's in here. Vala has this unknown power that pretty much nobody has, and she is the key to unlocking the empire, that whole business. I do love a strong female lead. She is a strong female lead. Love triangles, I've already talked about that. Lots of love triangles. We've got the trope of, I absolutely love you, but I can't be with you. That tension for like the first 3.5 books. I love you and I want to be with you, but I shouldn't be with you and I can't be with you. That whole business. And then if you don't want this is a little bit of a spoiler, but I feel like it won't ruin the book for you, but just maybe skip forward like 30 seconds. But then we have the typical trope of epilogue baby, which again, I'm getting tired of. Okay, those were a lot of the tropes that were in the book. Thing that I really liked about the book is that the spice level is pretty low. It's maybe a 1 out of 5, which was nice. It's very rare these days that you find a YA fantasy with a lot of romance, a slow burn romance that is pretty low on the spice. I did like that. I appreciated that. I did like the magical system. I liked the world building. There were a lot of really amazing characters. There was a lot of emphasis placed on friendships as well as the romance. I actually would have liked a little less romance and more with friendships, honestly, because some of those friendships were so precious. It does have a mostly happy ending, which I also enjoyed. Now for what I struggled with. Again, I've already mentioned the triangles, but triangles again. I felt like there were some really great characters that we could have gotten a lot more out of their story, and they kind of just disappeared, or they got cut out of the story. I will say that without any major spoilers. There were some really amazing characters that were built up and just, they didn't get to really live into how amazing they were written. Is specifically Aldrich's cousin, Daniel, who else? Prince Balder. There were, Jax is another one. There are a number of characters that were really amazing where I felt like their story got cut short or was diluted down for the sake of the romance. And that's kind of what I meant by I wanted more of the friendship and other relationships than kind of our main love story, personally. It was giving very Edward and Bella vibes, and I love Twilight, don't get me wrong. I love Twilight. You can at me if you want. I love Twilight, but I always was Team Jacob because of how weirdly obsessive Bella and Edward were. It was too much. It was too much. And it was giving those vibes, which at times were really annoying. The number of times Aldrich says, my lady, my love, my Vala, it was annoying. I was like, okay, we get it. We get it, you love her. And the number of times that in these scenes that you hear her say, Aldrich, 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 that is just so annoying to me in books when you just overkill those pet names and stuff. I don't know. It was giving too much Bella and Edward. I also felt like this series was one book too long. I think that you could have combined the second and the third book and put more emphasis on the war, see more wartime. The war was actually pretty quick. I felt like it resolved very quickly, and I think it would have, the first war. I think that the second and third book could have been combined, and we see a little bit more of that tension between taking out the northern tribes people and how morally gray that is. Not even gray, just bad, just all around bad. But what the Emperor does is just terrible. I would have liked to see that expand a little bit more. So overall, let me give my rating per book. For me, it started out strong, and by the end, I was over it. Which is sad because I did really enjoy this book series, but the further I went on, the faster I wanted to finish the series, and not for good reasons. So the first book I gave a 4.5, which I probably would go ahead and pat it as a 5. So Air Awakens, I would give 4.5. Fire Falling, I would give a 4. Earth's End, I would give a 3. Water's Wrath, I would also give a 3. And then Crystal Crown, honestly, I would give between a 2.5 to 3 stars. I don't know if I love this series. It's hard because there's a part of me that really, really loves it. At the end, I definitely felt torn because there were parts of the story I really, really loved, and then there were other parts that just disappointed me. I was really disappointed. I don't know. This one I kind of feel weird about, to be completely honest. I did listen to it. I did enjoy the narrator. Will I come back to it? I have no idea. Probably not, because I was so ticked with some of the resolutions. That's okay. I would love to know, did you read or listen to this series? What did you think? Did you agree, disagree? Let me know in the comments. I want to know your thoughts, and I will see you next time. We will come back, and I don't know what we'll talk about next, but we'll talk about something good. See you next time. Bye.